Welcome back to Night Mode Lore. Tonight, we're exploring the complete lore of Springtrap, the corpse in the suit, the murderer transformed into mechanical horror, the human remains animated by malicious consciousness, William Afton's first undead form, being examined tonight as transformation, as punishment, as irony, as horror embodied, Springtrap being what William Afton became after springlock failure, being Purple Guy transformed from human killer into mechanical monster, being child murderer's corpse trapped in Spring Bonnie costume, being dead body with awareness, being rotting remains continuing to move, to think, to hunt, to persist, Springtrap representing William's refusal to die, representing evil that endures beyond death, representing corruption absolute, being examined tonight comprehensively, every aspect of Springtrap explored, every element of his existence analyzed, every detail of his form examined, from springlock failure that created him to 30 years sealed away to emergence at Fazbear's Fright, to survival of fire, to transformation into Scraptrap, being Springtrap's complete story, being William as corpse in suit, being Purple Guy's mechanical prison, being murderer's undead form, being horror that defined FNAF 3, being examined with appropriate recognition of horror, of tragedy of transformation, of irony of murderer becoming what he created, of William being killed by Spring Bonnie, by suit he wore to murder children, by costume he used to gain trust, being killed by his own creation, becoming trapped in his own tool, being imprisoned in mechanical form, being corpse animated by consciousness that refused to die, being Springtrap, being examined tonight completely. This is comprehensive exploration of Springtrap's lore, examining what he is physically, what springlock failure did to William's body, how consciousness persisted despite death, what 30 years sealed in safe room meant, how isolation affected him, what emergence at Fazbear's Fright revealed about his nature, how he hunted night guard, how he survived fire, how he deteriorated into Scraptrap, examining not just events but meaning, not just timeline but symbolism, not just what happened but what it represents, understanding Springtrap as character, as form, as transformation, as William Afton's punishment and persistence, as murderer becoming monster, as human becoming mechanical horror, as evil refusing to end, as consciousness trapped in rotting corpse trapped in mechanical suit, being examined as horror, as body horror specifically, as grotesque transformation, as death that isn't death, as corpse that moves, as remains that think, as horror absolute, being Springtrap analyzed comprehensively, understood thoroughly, examined with recognition of what he represents, what he means, why he's important, being FNAF's most iconic horror, being franchise's visual embodiment of evil, persisting, being William Afton at most grotesque, being Purple Guy at most, horrifying, being child murderer transformed into mechanical corpse, being examined with appropriate horror, appropriate fascination, appropriate recognition of design brilliance, of concept effectiveness, of Springtrap being perfect FNAF villain visually and thematically. Whether you're discovering Springtrap's complete lore for first time, revisiting familiar horror as you drift towards sleep, or simply letting exploration wash over you as consciousness fades, this will carry you through his complete story, every element of his creation, every aspect of his existence, every detail of his persistence, being comprehensive examination designed to give you complete understanding while gently facilitating rest, being story told calmly despite horror, being analysis delivered soothingly despite grotesque subject matter, being night mode lore's approach, comprehensive coverage in sleep-facilitating format, respecting both content and purpose, treating Springtrap's lore seriously while acknowledging you're here to rest, to sleep, to find calm in detailed storytelling, in complete examination, in thorough analysis that engages mind just enough to quiet anxious thoughts, but not so much that sleep becomes impossible, being exactly what you need, being Springtrap's complete lore, being William as corpse in suit, being mechanical horror examined thoroughly, told comprehensively, explored for sleep, Springtrap deserving this examination, being FNAF's most important villain form, being a franchise's visual masterpiece, being horror design that works, being examined now completely, being understood thoroughly, being explored comprehensively. Let's begin this journey through Springtrap's lore, understanding that we start not with Springtrap, but with Spring Bonnie, not with corpse, but with costume, not with horror, but with entertainment character, understanding Spring Bonnie suit before understanding Springtrap, knowing costume before knowing corpse in costume, examining springlock technology before examining springlock failure, being foundation necessary for comprehending transformation, for understanding how William became Springtrap, how human became mechanical horror, how murderer became corpse in suit, beginning with Spring Bonnie, with Yellow Rabbit, with costume William wore, with suit that would become his prison, his tomb, his body, examining this first, understanding technology, understanding suit, understanding how springlocks worked and how they failed, being foundation for understanding Springtrap, for comprehending transformation, for analyzing what William became, beginning now, beginning with Spring Bonnie, with costume, with springlock technology, before exploring failure, before examining transformation, before understanding Springtrap completely, being comprehensive lore examination beginning now, being Springtrap from beginning to end, from Spring Bonnie to corpse in suit, to burned horror, to transformation, to Scraptrap, being complete story, being told now, being Springtrap's lore explored comprehensively, beginning with foundation, with Spring Bonnie, with understanding costume before corpse, being started now. Part 1. Spring Bonnie, the suit before the corpse, 1973-1993. As we begin this exploration, as sleep starts to pull you deeper, let us examine Spring Bonnie, the suit that would become Springtrap, understanding costume before understanding corpse in costume, Spring Bonnie being one of original animatronic characters, being Yellow Rabbit designed by Henry, Emily and William Afton, being entertainment character at Fredbear's Family Diner, being Springlock suit, being hybrid technology allowing suit to function as both animatronic and wearable costume, being innovative design, being brilliant and dangerous, Spring Bonnie being examined now as foundation, as understanding what Springtrap would become, what William wore before he was trapped in it, what costume looked like before it contained corpse, Spring Bonnie being Yellow Rabbit, being friendly appearance, being designed to entertain children, being beloved character, being mascot that children trusted, being character that would be corrupted by William, used by William, worn by William to commit murders, Spring Bonnie being examined as innocent beginning, as entertainment character that would become horror, as costume that would become prison, as animatronic that would become tomb, being Spring Bonnie before Springtrap, being examined comprehensively now. Spring Bonnie's design, entertainment character. Spring Bonnie was Yellow Rabbit animatronic, being designed with friendly appearance, with appeal to children, being entertainment character meant to perform, to sing, to move, to delight audiences, Spring Bonnie's design being examined as innocent, as wholesome, as created for good purpose, being yellow because yellow was bright, cheerful, visible, appealing to children, being rabbit because rabbits were cute, friendly, non-threatening, appropriate for children's entertainment, Spring Bonnie being designed by Henry Emily primarily, being Henry's creation, being his artistic vision, being character meant to bring joy, Spring Bonnie having specific features, being anthropomorphic rabbit, being standing upright, being having costume-like appearance even as animatronic, being designed to be appealing, to be friendly, to be trustworthy, Spring Bonnie's original design being examined as pure, as innocent, as created with good intentions, being entertainment character that children would love, that families would enjoy, that would perform at Fredbear's family diner, alongside Fredbear, being partner character, being secondary mascot, being important character in original restaurant, Spring Bonnie being yellow rabbit that performed, that entertained, that was beloved, being character that represented innocence, entertainment, childhood joy, being created to delight, designed to please, meant to bring happiness, the specific design elements being important for understanding later transformation, Spring Bonnie having large head, having prominent features, having costume-like appearance, being designed to be recognizable, to be distinctive, to be memorable, the suit having mechanical components when functioning as animatronic, having endoskeleton, having motors and mechanisms that allowed movement, being sophisticated robotics, being advanced technology for time, Spring Bonnie being impressive engineering achievement, being animatronic that could perform convincingly, that could move naturally, that could entertain effectively, being examined as Henry and William's collaborative creation, being both Henry's artistic vision and William's technical implementation, Spring Bonnie representing their partnership, their combined skills, their shared work, being character that embodied their collaboration, that demonstrated their capabilities, that proved their concept worked. Spring Bonnie being successful character, being popular with children, being effective entertainment, being proving that animatronic entertainment could work, could attract customers, could make business successful, being examined as innocent success, as pure achievement, as creation that worked exactly as intended, bringing joy to children, entertaining families, fulfilling purpose, being Spring Bonnie as entertainment character, as innocent creation, as character before corruption, before William's crimes, before transformation into Springtrap, Springlock technology, brilliant and deadly. Springlock suits were hybrid technology, being innovation that allowed suits to function as both animatronics and wearable costumes, being brilliant engineering concept, being dangerous implementation, springlock mechanism, being system of springs and locks that held animatronic parts in compressed position when suit was worn, springs holding endoskeleton pieces back, creating space for human body, allowing performer to wear suit, locks keeping springs engaged, keeping mechanical parts compressed, mechanism being activated by hand crank, being engaged deliberately when suit would be worn, being disengaged when suit would function as animatronic, springlock technology being examined as innovation, as clever solution to problem of wanting suits that could be both animatronics and costumes, being economical, being versatile, being useful for business, allowing single character to serve multiple purposes, being worn by performer for certain events, functioning as animatronic for other events, being flexible system that saved money, that maximized utility, that made business sense, springlock suits being examined as good idea with dangerous implementation, being concept that worked but was inherently risky, the danger being inherent in design, spring locks being triggered by moisture or sudden movement, being susceptible to failure, being vulnerable to environmental factors, moisture causing springs to become loose, causing locks to disengage, sudden movements causing similar failures, spring lock failure being catastrophic, being all spring locks failing simultaneously, being mechanical parts snapping back into normal positions, positions that included space occupied by person wearing suit, spring locks failing meaning endoskeleton forcing itself into space where human body was, mechanical parts piercing flesh, crushing bones, impaling organs, being death trap, being suit that could kill wearer if conditions were wrong, if moisture was present, if movements were too sudden, if temperature was wrong, if any number of factors caused spring locks to fail, being examined as dangerous technology, as innovation that prioritized function over safety, as design that accepted risk for sake of utility, spring lock suits being allowed despite danger, being used despite risk, being considered acceptable despite potential for catastrophic failure, being examined as decision that valued entertainment over safety, that prioritized business over protection, that accepted danger as cost of innovation, being typical of Fazbear entertainment, being pattern of prioritizing wrong things, being system that would eventually kill, that would create Springtrap, that would trap William in suit, being dangerous technology examined comprehensively. William's association with Spring Bonnie. William Afton was particularly associated with Spring Bonnie, being person who wore suit frequently, who performed in costume often, who was identified with Yellow Rabbit, William wearing Spring Bonnie being established early, being pattern from Fredbear's Family Diner days, William being person in Spring Bonnie suit, being performer, being entertainer supposedly, being using costume for legitimate purposes, initially possibly, wearing Spring Bonnie to perform, to entertain children, to fulfill business needs, but association continuing, deepening, becoming important, William being Spring Bonnie being William's character, being costume he wore, being suit he inhabited, being character he embodied, this association being important for understanding later crimes, William wearing Spring Bonnie to commit murders, using costume to lure children, exploiting trust in entertainment character to gain access to victims, William's association with Spring Bonnie being innocent initially, being legitimate performance, being business necessity, but becoming sinister, becoming dark, becoming tool for evil, William using Spring Bonnie costume to lure children to back rooms, to murder them, to commit missing children incident, wearing Yellow Rabbit suit to gain trust, children trusting Spring Bonnie, following Spring Bonnie, being led to deaths by character they trusted, by costume that was meant to entertain them, William corrupting Spring Bonnie completely, perverting innocent entertainment character into murder weapon, into tool for luring victims, into costume that facilitated crimes. The association being so strong that Spring Bonnie became synonymous with William, Yellow Rabbit becoming Purple Guy's costume, being what he wore, being how children knew him, being character that represented William to victims, Spring Bonnie being corrupted absolutely by William's use, by his crimes, by his wearing suit to commit murders, innocent entertainment character becoming symbol of evil, becoming representation of child murderer, becoming costume worn by villain, Spring Bonnie's corruption being complete, being total, being transformation from innocent to evil, from entertainment to horror, from beloved character to murder weapon, William's association with Spring Bonnie being foundation for understanding Springtrap, for comprehending irony of William being killed by Spring Bonnie, being trapped in suit he wore, being imprisoned in costume he used for crimes, William becoming Spring Bonnie permanently, becoming corpse in suit, becoming Springtrap, being killed by his own tool, trapped by his own weapon, imprisoned in his own costume, irony being perfect, being appropriate, being William experiencing ultimate consequence of using Spring Bonnie for evil, being killed by Spring Bonnie, becoming Spring Bonnie, being trapped as Spring Bonnie forever, association that was choice becoming association that was prison, William choosing to wear Spring Bonnie becoming William forced to be Spring Bonnie, being examined as irony, as poetic justice, as appropriate punishment, William being killed by what he used to kill, being trapped in what he used to trap children, being imprisoned in costume he used to lure victims, multiple springlock incidents, foreshadowing. Before William's death, there were other springlock incidents, being accidents, being failures that injured or killed people, springlock suits being dangerous enough that multiple incidents occurred, being documented in Phone Guy's messages, being referenced in FNAF 3, Phone Guy warning about springlock suits, explaining dangers, describing what happens when they fail, multiple springlock failures being examined as pattern, as foreshadowing, as evidence that technology was dangerous, that suits were death traps, that William's eventual death was predictable, was inevitable given suit design, given danger inherent in springlocks, other incidents being examined as warnings ignored, as evidence suppressed, as Fazbear Entertainment knowing suits were dangerous, but continuing to use them, continuing to allow performers to wear them, continuing to risk lives for sake of entertainment, for sake of business, being corporate evil, being prioritizing profit over safety, being accepting deaths as cost of doing business, other springlock incidents being tragic, being people dying or being severely injured, being victims of dangerous technology, being casualties of innovation that prioritize function over safety, these deaths being important for understanding William's death, for recognizing that his springlock failure was not unique, was not unprecedented, was pattern continuing, was William experiencing what others experienced, being killed by same technology that killed others, William's death being one of multiple springlock failures, being part of pattern, being consequence of dangerous technology that should have been banned, should have been discontinued, should have been recognized as unacceptable risk, the incidents leading to springlock suits being retired officially, being designated as too dangerous for use, being restricted after enough people died, enough incidents occurred, enough evidence accumulated that suits were unacceptable risk, springlock suits being officially discontinued, being removed from service, being stored rather than used, being put in safe rooms, in back rooms, in storage, being kept but not used, being designated as too dangerous for performers, official policy being no one should wear springlock suits, being recognition that technology was dangerous, that risk was unacceptable, that deaths needed to stop, but suits being kept, being stored, being available, being accessible, William being able to access Spring Bonnie suit years later, being able to put it on despite official policy against wearing springlock suits, being able to make fatal mistake of wearing dangerous suit in unsafe conditions, springlock suits being retired officially, but remaining accessible being important, being explaining how William was able to wear suit in 1993, how he was able to make fatal choice, how he was able to die in springlock failure, despite suits being officially discontinued, being examined as Fazbear Entertainment pattern, retiring dangerous technology but keeping it accessible, recognizing danger but not eliminating it completely, acknowledging risk but not preventing access, being typical corporate approach, being insufficient response to danger, being retirement that didn't protect, being policy that didn't prevent, being examined as setting up William's death, being making his springlock failure possible despite official discontinuation of suits. Let Spring Bonnie rest. As this section concludes, understanding Spring Bonnie as entertainment character, as springlock suit, as costume William wore, as character corrupted by his crimes, as suit that would become his prison, being foundation established, being context understood, being ready to continue to springlock failure, to William's death, to transformation into Springtrap, being explored after rest, after sleep, after letting foundation settle, being Spring Bonnie examined comprehensively as preparation for understanding Springtrap, being continued after rest. Part 2. The Springlock Failure, Birth of Springtrap, 1993. As we continue deeper into Springtrap's lore, as consciousness drifts further toward rest, we examine the springlock failure that created Springtrap, the moment William Afton died and didn't die, when human became corpse in suit, when murderer became mechanical horror, when purple guy became Springtrap, being examined now as transformation, as death that wasn't death, as William being killed by Spring Bonnie, being crushed by suit, being trapped in costume, being imprisoned in mechanical form, springlock failure being crucial event, being creation of Springtrap, being William's first death, being his transformation from human to undead, from person to corpse, from murderer to monster, being explored comprehensively now, every detail examined, every aspect analyzed, springlock failure being understood thoroughly, being foundation for understanding Springtrap, for comprehending what William became, for analyzing corpse in suit, being examined now completely. Returning to the scene, William's fatal mistake, 1993. After Freddy Fazbear's Pizza closed in 1993, William Afton returned to abandoned location, being drawn back to restaurant for reasons unclear, possibly seeking equipment, possibly hiding evidence, possibly running from something, possibly being lured by spirits of murdered children. William entering abandoned building, being in location alone, specific timing being unclear, but being after location closed, being when building was empty, abandoned, decaying. William being there for unclear purposes, being interrupted by spirits, being confronted by ghosts, spirits of murdered children appearing to William, Gabriel and Jeremy, and Susie, and Fritz and Cassidy manifesting as phantom children, as ghosts, as spiritual presences, appearing to William, terrifying him. William seeing children he murdered, seeing victims as ghosts, being confronted by his crimes, being faced with consequences, spirits approaching William, cornering him, frightening him. William being scared, being panicked, being running from ghosts, fleeing from spirits, being chased through restaurant by children he killed, being examined as poetic justice, as murderer being haunted by victims, as purple guy being terrorized by children he terrorized, as killer experiencing fear he inflicted. William being scared, being appropriate, being deserved, being children getting revenge through fear, if not through justice. Spirits chasing William through building, cornering him in back area, driving him towards safe room. William fleeing to safe room, to hidden room not visible on digital maps, to location where springlock suits were stored, to room containing Spring Bonnie and Fredbear suits. William entering safe room, being cornered there, being trapped by spirits, being faced with phantom children, being terrified, making fatal decision, seeing Spring Bonnie suit, thinking it would protect him, thinking ghosts wouldn't recognize him in costume, thinking he could hide in suit, thinking animatronics wouldn't attack animatronic. William's logic being flawed, being desperate, being panicked thinking rather than rational thinking. William putting on Spring Bonnie suit, being fatal mistake, being decision that would kill him, being choice that would trap him, being action that would create Springtrap. William climbing into suit in panic, in fear, not considering conditions, not thinking about moisture, not recognizing danger, safe room being humid, being decayed, being wrong environment for springlock suit, being dangerous conditions. William being sweating from fear, from running, from panic, his heavy breathing creating moisture, his sudden movements being dangerous, conditions being perfect for springlock failure, being exactly wrong circumstances, being set up for catastrophic failure. William putting on suit in worst possible conditions, being making fatal mistake, being sealing his doom, being creating circumstances for transformation, for death, for becoming Springtrap. The failure, mechanical death. The springlock failure was catastrophic, being complete system failure. All springlocks failing simultaneously, every spring releasing, every lock disengaging, entire mechanism failing at once, being comprehensive failure, being total collapse of system, the mechanical parts that were held back by springs being released instantly, snapping into normal positions with tremendous force, animatronic endoskeleton forcing itself into space occupied by William's body, metal beams and rods and mechanical components piercing through flesh, entering body in dozens of places, impaling organs, crushing bones, tearing through tissue, springlocks in every part of suit failing, head mechanisms crushing skull, jaw mechanisms breaking jaw, eyepieces destroying eyes, torso mechanisms piercing chest, crushing ribs, impaling internal organs, limb mechanisms crushing arms and legs, breaking bones, tearing muscles, being comprehensive destruction of body, being William being impaled and crushed simultaneously, being mechanical parts forcing themselves through human flesh, being endoskeleton positioning itself through William's body, being death by crushing and impalement, being catastrophic failure, meaning catastrophic injury, meaning death, the death being slow, being prolonged, William remaining conscious briefly, long enough to understand what was happening, long enough to realize he was dying, long enough to experience pain, to know he was being killed by Spring Bonnie, by suit he wore to murder children, by costume he used to gain trust, being killed by his own tool, dying in his own trap, experiencing ultimate irony, William's final moments being examined as conscious, as aware, as experiencing death, as understanding he was being killed by suit, being crushed by mechanism, being impaled by endoskeleton, William laughing according to minigame, finding humor in death, finding irony amusing, finding something funny about being killed by Spring Bonnie, about dying in suit, about being trapped in costume, William laughing as he died being disturbing, being evidence of his twisted psychology, being showing that William was monster even in death, even in final moments, even while being crushed and impaled, finding something humorous, something amusing, something funny. William's laughter being examined as disturbing detail, as evidence of his nature, as showing he was beyond normal human response, beyond typical psychology, beyond understanding death as tragedy, seeing death as irony, as joke, as amusing twist, laughing as he died being William's final act as human, being last thing he did while alive, being ending with laughter, with twisted humor, with recognition of irony. Death but not death. Consciousness persists. William's body died in springlock failure, being killed by crushing and impalement, being physically dead, heart stopping, breathing stopping, biological functions ending, William being corpse, being dead body, being remains, but consciousness persisting, awareness continuing, something remaining. William not dying completely, being dead but aware, being corpse but conscious, being remains with consciousness, something binding William to suit, keeping awareness active, preventing complete death, being examined as supernatural persistence, as remnant related possibly, as William's consciousness binding to spring bonnie suit, similar to how murdered children's spirits bound to animatronics, William experiencing what he inflicted on others, becoming possessed animatronic himself, being dead person's consciousness in mechanical form, being spirit bound to machine, being examined as possession, as William possessing spring bonnie, as his consciousness attaching to suit that killed him, being trapped in costume, being imprisoned in mechanical form, being unable to leave, unable to die completely, unable to move on. William becoming Springtrap in moment of death, being corpse in suit, being remains in costume, being dead body with consciousness, being mechanical horror, being something that shouldn't exist but did, being violation of natural order, dead should be dead, consciousness should end. William should be gone but wasn't, persisting through sheer determination, through refusal to die, through evil enduring, through remnant, through supernatural mechanics, through FNAF's possession rules applying to William himself. The transformation being complete, William ceasing to be human and becoming Springtrap, being no longer person, no longer living, no longer human, being corpse in suit, being mechanical horror, being undead animatronic, being possessed machine, being consciousness in rotting body in mechanical costume, being Springtrap, name coming from springlock failure that created him, being name for death that made him, being William Afton dead, being purple guy ended, being Springtrap born, being new form, new existence, new state, being dead but aware, being corpse but conscious, being remains but active, being trapped in suit, being imprisoned in spring bonnie costume, being unable to escape, unable to leave, unable to remove suit, being sealed inside, being trapped completely, being spring bonnie suit, being prison, being tomb, being mechanical body, being what William wore, becoming what William was, being costume becoming corpse's container, being suit becoming prison, being transformation complete, being William Afton becoming Springtrap, being human becoming mechanical horror, being murderer becoming monster, being examined as complete transformation, as fundamental change, as William ceasing to exist as human and beginning to exist as Springtrap, as corpse in suit, as mechanical undead, as horror embodied. The safe room is sealed. After William died in safe room, after springlock failure, after transformation into Springtrap, the safe room was sealed, being walled up, being blocked off, being hidden, being made inaccessible, who sealed it being unclear, possibly Fazbear Entertainment, possibly Henry Emily, possibly someone else, motivations being uncertain, possibly hiding William's corpse, possibly concealing evidence, possibly preventing discovery, possibly quarantining danger, safe room being sealed with Springtrap inside, William being trapped in sealed room, being imprisoned in walled-off space, being contained in hidden location, being left in darkness, being abandoned in sealed room, being forgotten or deliberately hidden, safe room being removed from building plans, being erased from digital maps, being made invisible to later investigations, being concealed completely, Springtrap being trapped inside for decades, being imprisoned in sealed room for 30 years, being alone in darkness for 3 decades, being isolated completely, being separated from world, from life, from everything. Safe room, ceiling being examined as crucial event, as beginning of Springtrap's imprisonment, as start of 30 years of isolation, as William being trapped, being contained, being left to rot, being abandoned in sealed space, being forgotten or deliberately hidden, being left alone with consciousness in corpse in suit, being beginning of extended suffering, of decades of imprisonment, of 30 years of isolation, being Springtrap sealed in safe room, being start of new phase, being beginning of long imprisonment, being examined as crucial element of Springtrap's story. Let this failure rest. Understanding springlock failure killed William. That consciousness persisted, that he became Springtrap, that safe room was sealed with him inside, being transformation examined thoroughly, being death that wasn't death understood comprehensively, being ready to continue to 30 years of imprisonment, to decades sealed away, to isolation and decay, being explored after rest, after sleep, after letting transformation settle into understanding, being Springtrap created, being examined as foundation for understanding what came next, being continued after rest. Part 3, 30 years sealed, imprisonment in darkness, 1993 suit and 2023. Continuing through Springtrap's lore, examining 3 decades of imprisonment, understanding what 30 years sealed in safe room meant, exploring isolation, decay, psychological impact, being examined now as extended suffering, as prolonged imprisonment, as decades of being corpse in suit in sealed room, Springtrap spending 30 years alone, being trapped from 1993 to 2023, being approximately 3 decades of isolation, of darkness, of being sealed away, being explored comprehensively now. Physical decay. Body becoming skeleton. Springtrap's physical form decayed during 30 years sealed away. William's corpse rotting inside suit, decomposing, breaking down, organic matter deteriorating while mechanical suit remained, being examined as gradual decay, as slow decomposition, as body becoming skeleton over decades, William's flesh rotting, being consumed by bacteria, breaking down naturally, organs decomposing, tissue dissolving, flesh rotting away, leaving bones, leaving skeleton, leaving what remained after decay, but decomposition being incomplete, being slow, being limited by suit, by environment, by being sealed away from air partially, from insects, from usual decomposition factors, decay being slower than normal body decay, being extended over decades, being gradual rather than rapid, but being inexorable, being inevitable, being William's body breaking down, rotting, becoming skeleton in suit, becoming bones in costume, becoming remains rather than corpse, flesh disappearing, bones remaining, skull being visible, skeleton being exposed, rotting being visible through tears in suit, through damage to costume, through gaps in Spring Bonnie, Springtrap's appearance being examined as rotting corpse, as decaying body, as skeleton in suit, being horror of visible decay, of obvious death, of corpse that moved, of bones that were conscious, being body horror, being grotesque appearance, being visual representation of death that didn't end, of corpse that persisted, of remains that continued, the suit preserving body somewhat, holding bones together, containing remains, preventing complete dissolution, Spring Bonnie suit acting as container, as prison, as body, holding skeleton together, preventing bones from scattering, maintaining form, keeping remains in roughly human shape, suit being what held Springtrap together physically, being mechanical exoskeleton containing biological endoskeleton, being reversed relationship, being suit outside, bones inside, rather than normal animatronic with endoskeleton inside and costume outside. Springtrap being bones inside, suit outside. Being corpse contained by costume. Being remains held by mechanical shell. Suit being crucial for Springtrap's physical existence. Being what allowed corpse to maintain form. Being what prevented complete disintegration. Being mechanical body holding biological remains. Being examined as symbiotic relationship, as suit and corpse being merged. Being Springtrap being combination of both. Being neither just suit nor just corpse, but fusion of mechanical and organic. Being hybrid horror. Being mechanical corpse. Being suit containing bones. Being Spring Bonnie holding William's remains. Being examined as physical form, as what Springtrap was materially, as combination of suit and skeleton, of costume and corpse, of mechanical and organic merged into single entity, consciousness in corpse, psychological horror. Springtrap's consciousness persisting in decaying body being examined as psychological horror, as being aware while body rotted, as experiencing own decomposition, as consciousness continuing while flesh dissolved, while body became skeleton, being nightmare existence, being horror beyond comprehension, being aware as corpse, being conscious as remains, being thinking despite being dead, William experiencing his own decay, being aware as flesh rotted away, being conscious as body decomposed, being trapped in corpse as corpse broke down, being experiencing transformation from fresh corpse to rotting corpse to skeleton, being aware through entire process, being conscious during decomposition, being horror of experiencing death as ongoing process rather than instant end, being dead but aware of being dead, being corpse but knowing your corpse, being remains but thinking like living person, being psychological horror of consciousness in dead body, of awareness in corpse, of thought continuing in remains. William experiencing this for 30 years, being aware for 3 decades, being conscious through entire period of decay, of isolation, of imprisonment, being thinking throughout, being aware throughout, being experiencing 30 years as conscious corpse, as aware skeleton, as thinking remains. The isolation being absolute, Springtrap being alone in sealed room, being no light, no sound except what he made, no stimulation except his own thoughts, no interaction, no connection, no contact with anything external, being sensory deprivation, being complete isolation, being only thoughts, only awareness, only consciousness with no input, no stimulation, no external experience. 30 years of this, 3 decades of isolation, of being alone with thoughts, with memories, with consciousness in corpse, of thinking in darkness, of being aware in isolation, of experiencing existence as trapped consciousness in rotting body in sealed room, being psychological torture, being suffering beyond description, being examined as horror, as nightmare existence, as condition that should destroy mind, that should break psychology completely. Isolation for 30 years being examined as sufficient to destroy sanity, to eliminate personality, to reduce consciousness to madness. But William persisting, William enduring, William remaining himself, remaining evil, remaining determined. Isolation not reforming him, not changing him, not making him better but making him worse, concentrating his malice, fermenting his evil. 30 years alone making William more dangerous, more malicious, more evil. Isolation refining his worst qualities, concentrating his darkness, making him purer evil, being examined as William being corrupted further by imprisonment, being made worse by isolation, being concentrated into more intense evil by decades alone with his thoughts, with his hatred, with his determination to continue. planning and scheming. Evil, persisting Springtrap during 30 years planning, scheming, waiting, being determined to escape, to continue, to persist in his evil. Isolation not defeating him, not breaking him, not reforming him. 30 years not being redemption period. Not being time of reflection leading to change. Not being imprisonment leading to reform. William remaining William. Evil remaining evil. Springtrap remaining dangerous. 30 years being time of waiting, of planning, of preparing mentally for eventual escape, for continuation of existence, for persisting in whatever goals motivated him, whether immortality or power or simple evil. William spending decades planning escape, thinking about continuation, preparing mentally for freedom, determination never wavering, evil never diminishing, malice never fading. 30 years isolated, not making William better, not reducing his danger, not reforming his evil, making him more concentrated, more determined, more purely malicious. Isolation being tempering, being refining, being concentrating William's evil into purer form, making him worse rather than better, being 30 years producing more dangerous Springtrap rather than reformed William, being examined as evil persisting, as malice enduring, as determination continuing, as consciousness in corpse remaining focused on goals, remaining committed to evil, remaining dangerous despite decades of isolation, despite physical decay, despite being dead, despite being trapped. William persisting, planning, scheming, waiting for escape, being examined as testament to his evil, to his determination, to his refusal to reform, to change, to become better, being Springtrap remaining dangerous throughout imprisonment, remaining evil throughout isolation, remaining threat despite being sealed away. Physical changes during imprisonment. The suit deteriorating during 30 years, Spring Bonnie costume decaying alongside body, being damaged by time, by environment, by moisture in sealed room, by decades of existence, suit showing wear, showing damage, showing age, yellow color fading, fabric tearing, mechanical parts rusting, deteriorating, breaking down, suit becoming more damaged, more worn, more obviously wrong over decades, Springtrap's appearance being affected by time, by 30 years of decay, by decades of imprisonment, suit and body, both deteriorating, both showing damage, both being obviously wrong, obviously dead, obviously corrupted, 30 years making Springtrap more grotesque, more obviously corpse, more visibly decayed, more horrifying in appearance, time not being kind, isolation not preserving, decades making Springtrap worse, making him more damaged, more decayed, more obviously mechanical corpse, more clearly horror, being examined as time affecting both biological and mechanical components, body decaying, suit deteriorating, both breaking down, both showing damage, both being corrupted by time, by isolation, by decades of existence in sealed room. Springtrap emerging after 30 years, being more damaged than when sealed, being more decayed, being more obviously corpse, being more grotesque, being worse, being more horrifying, being examined as time making Springtrap more horror, making him more obviously wrong, making him more clearly abomination, being 30 years of decay visible in appearance, in damage, in deterioration. Let these decades rest. Understanding Springtrap spent 30 years sealed away, that body decayed to skeleton, that consciousness persisted through decay, that isolation was absolute, that he planned throughout imprisonment, that suit deteriorated alongside body, being 3 decades examined thoroughly, being imprisonment understood comprehensively, being ready to continue to discovery, to emergence at Fazbear's Fright, to Springtrap becoming active again, being explored after rest, after sleep, after letting decades settle into understanding, being 30 years of imprisonment examined completely, being continued after rest. Part 4. Fazbear's Fright, the Horror Attraction, 2023. As we continue toward present timeline, examining Springtrap's discovery, his emergence from imprisonment, his role at Fazbear's Fright horror attraction, being explored now as Springtrap becoming active, becoming threat, becoming horror attraction's real horror, being examined comprehensively. Discovery, finding Springtrap. In 2023, 30 years after being sealed, Springtrap was discovered by crew setting up Fazbear's Fright horror attraction, being entrepreneurs creating entertainment based on Freddy Fazbear's Pizza history, creating horror attraction based on rumors and legends, crews searching for authentic materials, for real animatronics, for genuine pieces of history, crew finding safe room in abandoned Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, discovering hidden room, breaking through wall, entering sealed space, finding Springtrap inside, discovering corpse in suit, seeing what looked like deactivated animatronic, not knowing it was William Afton's corpse, not realizing it was conscious, was dangerous, was murderer still existing, crew seeing Springtrap as treasure, as authentic animatronic from original location, as perfect centerpiece for horror attraction, as real piece of Fazbear history, being excited about discovery, being pleased to find genuine animatronic, not understanding danger, not recognizing threat, not knowing they found child murderer's corpse, found purple guy still existing, found evil still active, crew bringing Springtrap to Fazbear's Fright, transporting corpse in suit to horror attraction, positioning him as central exhibit, making him main attraction, displaying Springtrap as authentic piece of history, as real animatronic from original restaurant, as genuine article, not knowing truth, not understanding what they brought into building, not recognizing danger they imported, being examined as ironic, as horror attraction bringing real horror, as fake fear importing actual danger, as entertainment about murders displaying actual murderer. Springtrap at Fazbear's Fright. Active horror. Springtrap at Fazbear's Fright being active, being mobile, being dangerous, being not deactivated animatronic, but conscious corpse. Not harmless exhibit, but active threat. Springtrap being able to move during nights, being hunting night guard, being pursuing victim, being William Afton continuing his evil, continuing his danger, continuing his pattern of being threat despite being corpse, despite being dead for 30 years, despite being sealed away. Springtrap emerging from imprisonment unchanged, being still dangerous, still evil, still pursuing victims, still being threat, 30 years not reforming him, isolation not changing him, death not stopping him, Springtrap being examined as persistent threat, as danger that endured, as evil that continued, William as Springtrap being consistent with William as human, being same person, same evil, same malice in different form, being corpse but being same consciousness, same determination, same evil, Springtrap being examined as William continuing, as purple guy persisting, as child murderer remaining dangerous despite being dead, despite being corpse, despite being mechanical horror, being examined as active threat at Fazbear's Fright, as danger to night guard, as hunter pursuing victim, as evil continuing its pattern. Behavior and psychology. Corpse as Hunter Springtrap's behavior in FNAF 3. Being aggressive, being predatory, being hunting night guard systematically, being moving through building toward office, being entering vents, being approaching victim, being attempting to reach guard, to attack, to kill possibly. Springtrap's behavior being William's behavior, being Purple Guy's patterns, being murderer continuing his evil, his hunting, his pursuing victims, consciousness in corpse directing movement, controlling suit, using mechanical body to hunt, to pursue, to attempt harm, being examined as William being himself despite transformation, despite being corpse, despite being mechanical horror, William's personality persisting, his malice continuing, his determination enduring, Springtrap being William, being same person in different form, being corpse acting like human acted, being undead pursuing like murderer pursued, being mechanical horror maintaining human psychology, human motivations, human evil, William as Springtrap being examined as psychologically continuous, being same consciousness, same personality, same evil in corpse form, being murderer who became corpse remaining murderer, being Purple Guy who became Springtrap remaining Purple Guy, being William continuing as William despite transformation, despite death, despite becoming mechanical horror, Springtrap being examined as evidence that William persisted, that death didn't change him, that becoming corpse didn't reform him, that transformation didn't make him different, being same evil in different form, being examined thoroughly, the psychology being examined as William refusing to change, refusing to reform, refusing to stop being evil, 30 years sealed away, not making him better, death not making him regret, becoming corpse not making him reflect, William remaining William, persisting in evil, continuing in malice, being examined as ultimate persistence, as evil that wouldn't reform, as malice that wouldn't change, as determination that wouldn't waver. William being villain, who couldn't be changed by death, by isolation, by transformation, by becoming horror, remaining evil throughout, remaining dangerous throughout, remaining threat throughout, being examined as persistent evil, as malice absolute, as villain who wouldn't stop, wouldn't change, wouldn't reform, being William Afton being same whether human or corpse, whether alive or dead, whether person or mechanical horror, being consistently evil, being persistently dangerous, being unchanging in malice, being Springtrap being William, being Purple Guy continuing, being examined as psychological continuity, as consciousness persisting unchanged, as evil enduring undiminished, as William remaining himself despite everything. The phantom animatronics, spiritual contamination. Phantom animatronics appearing at Fazbear's Fright during week, being hallucinations or spiritual manifestations, being burned versions of animatronics, being phantom presences, being not physical but psychological or spiritual, phantoms being examined as connected to Springtrap possibly, being drawn to him, being responding to his presence, being manifestations of spiritual contamination, being echoes of murders, being residual horror responding to murderer's presence, phantoms being Phantom Freddy, Phantom Chica, Phantom Foxy, Phantom Balloon Boy, Phantom Puppet, Phantom Mangle, being burned appearances suggesting they were destroyed, being phantoms suggesting they were spiritual rather than physical, being examined as supernatural phenomena, as horror beyond physical, as spiritual consequences of William's crimes, phantoms being drawn to Springtrap, appearing where he is, being present because murderer is present, being spiritual contamination responding to source of contamination, being examined as William's presence creating supernatural disturbance, his evil being so profound that it manifests supernatural phenomena, his crimes being so terrible that they left spiritual residue, phantom animatronics being evidence of this, being manifestations of horror that persisted, being spiritual contamination that remained, being examined as connected to Springtrap, as responding to his presence, as evidence of supernatural consequences of his crimes, being horror that surrounded murderer, being spiritual phenomena drawn to evil, being phantoms appearing because Springtrap was present, because William was there, because murderer remained, being examined thoroughly, night guard identity, possible Michael night guard at Fazbear's Fright, possibly being Michael Afton, being William's son, being person with reason to be there, to be investigating father, to be confronting purple guy, to be attempting to stop what William started. Michael's presence at Fazbear's Fright making sense if he's pursuing father, if he's trying to end horror, if he's attempting to stop William. Michael confronting Springtrap being son confronting father, being family confrontation, being personal rather than coincidental. Night Guard's identity never being confirmed explicitly, being ambiguous, being left unclear by FNAF, but Michael being probable, being likely, being person with motivation to be there, being person who would work at horror attraction if father's corpse was there, being examined as family horror, being son being hunted by father's corpse, being child being pursued by parents' undead form, being Michael experiencing father as mechanical horror, being confronting William as Springtrap, being family dynamics continuing despite death, despite transformation, despite William being corpse, Michael possibly being guard being examined as important, as making events personal, as making confrontation about family, about Aftons, about son trying to stop father, about Michael opposing William, about family horror continuing, being examined as significant if true, as making Fazbear's Fright events more meaningful, more personal, more tragic, being son confronting father's corpse, being child dealing with parents' undead evil, being Michael facing Springtrap, being family confrontation, being examined comprehensively. Let Fazbear's Fright rest. Understanding Springtrap was discovered in sealed room, that he was brought to horror attraction, that he was active and dangerous, that he hunted night guard, that phantom animatronics appeared around him, that guard was possibly Michael, being Fazbear's Fright era examined thoroughly, being ready to continue to first fire, to Springtrap surviving, to his continued persistence, being explored after rest, after sleep, after letting this settle, being Springtrap at horror attraction examined completely, being continued after rest. Part 5. The first fire and survival, persistence proven, 2023. Continuing Springtrap's lore, examining fire that consumed Fazbear's Fright, understanding how Springtrap survived, exploring his continued persistence, being examined now as proof that William wouldn't die, that Springtrap endured, that evil persisted beyond fire, being explored comprehensively. Fazbear's Fright burns. Fazbear's Fright burned at end of week. Fire consuming horror attraction, destroying building, supposedly eliminating Springtrap. Flames being hot enough to consume wooden structure, to burn building completely, to destroy everything inside. Fire being comprehensive, being total destruction of facility. Fazbear's Fright being reduced to ruins, being burned completely, being eliminated, being destroyed. Fire being what should have killed Springtrap, being heat sufficient to burn animatronic, to destroy corpse, to eliminate mechanical horror, being flames that should have ended William finally, permanently, completely, fire burning through building, consuming everything, destroying horror attraction thoroughly, leaving only ruins, only ashes, only destruction, being examined as attempt to end Springtrap, as fire that should have worked, that should have destroyed corpse in suit, that should have ended William's persistence, being comprehensive burning, being total destruction, being fire sufficient to eliminate horror, but Springtrap surviving, William persisting, corpse in suit, enduring beyond flames, beyond burning, beyond destruction of building, being examined as failure of fire, as Springtrap proving resistant, as William refusing to die even when burned, being evidence of his persistence, of his determination, of his refusal to end, fire being sufficient to destroy building, but insufficient to destroy Springtrap, being examined as proof of William's supernatural persistence, being evidence that he wouldn't die normally. That regular destruction wasn't enough. That fire alone couldn't end him. Springtrap survives, crawling from ruins. Springtrap survived fire, being found afterward in newspaper image, being visible in burned ruins, being corpse in suit still existing after building burned. William persisting beyond fire, continuing despite burning, surviving despite flames. Springtrap crawling from burning building, escaping destruction, leaving ruins, continuing to exist despite fire, despite building being destroyed, despite everything burning, being examined as incredible survival, as persistence beyond reason, as William refusing to die even when burned. Springtrap surviving being proof that he wouldn't end easily, that simple fire wasn't sufficient, that destroying building didn't destroy him, that burning wasn't enough to eliminate him. William persisting beyond fire being pattern beginning, being first survival, being proof that he would continue despite attempts to end him. Springtrap after fire being damaged, being burned, being more deteriorated, being worse than before. Fire damaging but not destroying him. Flames burning but not eliminating him. Heat affecting but not ending him. Springtrap emerging from fire, being more damaged corpse, being burned body and burned suit, being fire damaged horror, being worse than before fire, being more obviously corpse, more clearly horror, more visibly damaged, but being alive still, being conscious still, being William still, being dangerous still, surviving and continuing, persisting beyond fire, being examined as proof of his determination, of his refusal to die, of his supernatural persistence. Transformation to Scraptrap, further deterioration. After fire, Springtrap became Scraptrap, being designation for burned and further damaged form, being what Springtrap became after surviving Fazbear's Fright fire. Scraptrap being more damaged version, being fire damaged corpse in fire damaged suit, being obviously burned, being clearly deteriorated, being worse than Springtrap. Scraptrap's appearance being more grotesque, being more obviously corpse, being more clearly horror, suit being more damaged, being more torn, being more revealing of skull underneath, of bones inside, of corpse being contained, Scraptrap being what time and fire did to Springtrap, being further deterioration, being additional damage, being more obvious horror, being corpse becoming more visible, being skeleton showing more clearly, being mechanical suit, being more damaged, more obviously failing to contain remains, Scraptrap being examined as evolution of Springtrap, as further transformation, as continued deterioration, being William becoming worse, being corpse becoming more obviously corpse, being horror becoming more obviously horror, fire damaging suit, exposing more of corpse, revealing more of skeleton, making Springtrap into Scraptrap, making hidden horror more visible horror, being examined as transformation through damage, as deterioration creating new form, as fire creating Scraptrap from Springtrap, as burned version being different enough to warrant new designation, being Scraptrap being Springtrap after fire, being burned corpse in burned suit, being fire damaged horror, being examined thoroughly, the physical changes being significant, Scraptrap showing obvious fire damage, showing burn marks, showing charred suit, showing exposed skull more clearly, skull being more visible through damaged suit, being more obviously skeleton, more clearly corpse, Scraptrap being less concealed than Springtrap, being more honest about being corpse, being suit failing to hide horror, being costume failing to conceal remains, being mechanical components more visible, more exposed, more obviously failing, Scraptrap being examined as damaged version of Springtrap, as fire revealing what was hidden, as burning exposing corpse more clearly, as flame stripping away concealment, as heat damaging suit enough to show skeleton more obviously, being Scraptrap being more visible horror, being less hidden corpse, being more obvious skeleton in suit, being examined as aesthetic change, as visual deterioration, as Springtrap becoming Scraptrap through fire damage, through burning, through survival of flames, being form that emerged from ruins, being corpse that crawled from fire, being burned horror, being Scraptrap, being examined comprehensively. Continuing threat, still dangerous. Scraptrap being still dangerous, being still William, being still evil, being still threat, fire not eliminating danger, burning not destroying evil, surviving not, including reformation, Scraptrap being same consciousness, same malice, same determination, being William continuing, being purple guy persisting, being child murderer remaining threat, despite being burned, despite being more damaged, despite being obviously horror, Scraptrap being drawn to Freddy Fazbear's pizza place, being attracted to Henry's trap location, being lured there by something, by promise of children possibly, by opportunity to continue evil possibly, by being William unable to stop being William, unable to stop seeking victims, unable to stop being murderer, Scraptrap coming to pizzeria being examined as a William continuing patterns, being murderer returning to familiar environment, being purple guy seeking pizzeria setting, being person unable to change, unable to stop, unable to reform even after death, after 30 years sealed, after fire, after everything, William remaining dangerous, remaining evil, remaining threat, Scraptrap being examined as persistent danger, as continuing threat, as evil that wouldn't stop, fire not ending him, damage not stopping him, being worse, not making him less dangerous, being examined as William being consistently evil, being unchanging in malice, being persistent in danger, being Scraptrap being threat, being dangerous, being evil continuing, being examined thoroughly. Let first fire rest. Understandings Fazbear's Fright burned, that Springtrap survived, that he became Scraptrap, that he remained dangerous, that fire didn't end him, being first survival examined thoroughly, being proof of persistence established, being ready to continue to Henry's trap, to FNAF 6, to second fire, to supposed ending, being explored after rest, after sleep, after letting survival settle into understanding, being Springtrap, Scraptrap examined comprehensively, being continued after rest. Part 6. Henry's Trap and Second Fire, the supposed end, 2023. As we continue through Springtrap's lore, now as Scraptrap, examining Henry Emily's comprehensive trap, understanding Second Fire, exploring supposed ending, being examined as attempt to destroy William finally, to end Scraptrap, to eliminate Purple Guy completely, being explored now thoroughly. Freddy Fazbear's pizza place, drawn into trap Scraptrap was drawn to Freddy Fazbear's pizza place, being Henry Emily's trap location, being building designed specifically to gather possessed animatronics, to collect all haunted machines including Scraptrap, including William. Scraptrap being lured to location, being attracted to pizzeria, being unable to resist coming to building, being drawn by nature, by patterns, by being William unable to stay away from Freddy Fazbear's pizza, being murderer returning to familiar setting, being purple guy seeking pizzeria environment, Scraptrap entering building, being salvaged, being brought into facility, being positioned in labyrinth, being trapped without knowing it, being contained in building designed to prevent escape. Henry's labyrinth ensuring Scraptrap couldn't leave, couldn't escape once inside, couldn't survive fire that was coming. Scraptrap being in building with Scrap Baby, Elizabeth, his daughter, with Molten Freddy, containing multiple spirits, with Lefty, containing Charlotte Emily, being gathered animatronics, being all possessed machines in single location, being positioned for ending, for fire, for comprehensive destruction, Scraptrap being part of collection, being one of haunted animatronics gathered, being William trapped alongside other spirits, alongside daughter, alongside victims, being family reunion, being gathering of everyone connected, being Aftons together, being victims and murderer present, being everyone positioned for ending. Henry's speech, addressing the murderer. Henry's speech in FNAF 6, addressing everyone, including Scraptrap, including William. Henry speaking to former partner, to person who killed his daughter, to murderer, to child killer. Henry confronting William finally, telling him he knew, that he understood, that William wouldn't be content to disappear, that William would continue if allowed, that he had to be destroyed. Henry's words to William being examined as confrontation, as recognition of William's nature, as understanding that Scraptrap would persist, that William wouldn't stop, that he had to be eliminated completely. Henry acknowledging William's presence, speaking to him directly, telling him the trap was for him, the fire was for him, the destruction was to end him. Henry confronting William being examined as important moment, as former partners facing each other finally, as creator confronting destroyer, as victim's father confronting murderer, as person who built everything confronting person who corrupted everything. Henry's words being both condemnation and pragmatism, being acknowledging William's evil while recognizing he had to be destroyed, that Scraptrap couldn't be allowed to continue, that fire was necessary, that comprehensive destruction was required. Henry ensuring William knew he was trapped, knew he would die, knew this was ending, being examined as Henry facing William, confronting Scraptrap, ensuring murderer understood what was happening, being final confrontation between partners, being examined thoroughly. The second fire, comprehensive destruction, the fire burning Freddy Fazbear's pizza place completely, being designed by Henry to be hot enough to destroy Remnant, to eliminate animatronics, to free spirits, to kill Scraptrap, to destroy William finally, flames consuming building, heat being intense, burning being thorough, fire destroying Scraptrap supposedly, burning corpse in suit, eliminating William's form, destroying mechanical body, burning remains, eliminating Scraptrap completely supposedly, fire being what Henry designed to work, to succeed where first fire failed, to destroy William where Fazbear's Fright fire didn't, being hotter, being more comprehensive, being sustained, longer, being designed specifically to eliminate Scraptrap, to destroy William, to end Purple Guy finally, fire consuming everything, burning building completely, destroying all animatronics, supposedly eliminating Scraptrap, supposedly ending William, supposedly finishing Purple Guy, fire being examined as comprehensive solution, as designed destruction, as Henry's trap working, as flames consuming Scraptrap, destroying corpse in suit, eliminating mechanical horror, ending William Afton supposedly, ending Springtrap, Scraptrap supposedly, being second fire, being supposed ending, being comprehensive burning meant to eliminate William completely, permanently, finally, being examined as Henry's success, as murderer being destroyed, as Scraptrap being eliminated, as fire working supposedly maybe, being ambiguous like everything FNAF, being unclear whether William truly died, whether Scraptrap was truly destroyed, whether fire truly ended him, ambiguity of death. Did Scraptrap truly end? Whether Scraptrap was destroyed in second fire being ambiguous, being uncertain. Later games suggesting William survived somehow, that consciousness persisted digitally, that he became Glitchtrap, that fire destroyed physical form but didn't eliminate consciousness, that William continued in new medium, in digital form, in virtual space, being examined as possible survival, as potential continuation, as William persisting even beyond second fire, even beyond Henry's comprehensive trap, even beyond designed destruction, or being examined as Scraptrap ending, but William continuing differently, physical form being destroyed but consciousness surviving separately, Scraptrap being eliminated, but William being uploaded, corpse in suite being burned, but consciousness being preserved in circuit board, being digitized, being uploaded to software, becoming Glitchtrap, being examined as complicated ending, as Scraptrap possibly ending while William continued, as physical form being destroyed while consciousness persisted, as complicated survival rather than simple continuation, being ambiguous, being uncertain, being FNAF refusing clear answer, being franchise maintaining mystery, being whether Scraptrap truly died, being unknown, being whether fire truly ended physical form being unclear, being whether William continued as Scraptrap or became something else being ambiguous, being examined as uncertain ending, as ambiguous conclusion, as FNAF being FNAF, refusing definite answers, maintaining possibility of continuation, keeping William's fate uncertain, being Scraptrap's ending being unclear, being second fire's success being ambiguous, being examined thoroughly. Let second fire rest, understanding Scraptrap was trapped at pizzeria, that Henry confronted William, that second fire burned everything, that Scraptrap was supposedly destroyed, that ending was ambiguous, being examined thoroughly, being ready to continue to modern era, to Glitchtrap, to Burntrap, to Williams, potential continuations, being explored after rest, after sleep, after letting fire settle, being Scraptrap's supposed ending examined, being continued after rest. Part 7. Beyond Scraptrap, Digital and Physical Returns, 2020s, 2030s. Continuing through timeline, examining what came after Scraptrap, understanding Glitchtrap and Burntrap, exploring whether these are continuations of Springtrap, Scraptrap, or separate entities, being examined now as potential persistence of William, as possible survival beyond second fire, being explored comprehensively. Glitchtrap, Digital Consciousness. After FNAF 6 fire, circuit board was salvaged from ruins, being scanned into VR game Help Wanted. William's consciousness being uploaded somehow, becoming Glitchtrap, becoming digital entity, being examined as William surviving in new form, as Scraptrap being destroyed but consciousness continuing, as physical form ending but awareness persisting digitally. Glitchtrap being William as software, as virus, as digital presence, being consciousness without physical form, being awareness in virtual space, being evil adapted to new medium. Glitchtrap being examined as potential continuation of Springtrap's consciousness, as William persisting beyond physical destruction, as evil surviving in digital form, circuit board containing remnant possibly, containing consciousness fragments, containing enough of William to reconstruct him digitally, to create Glitchtrap from Scraptrap's remains, being examined as transformation, as William evolving from physical to digital, from corpse in suit to data in software, from Scraptrap to Glitchtrap, being latest evolution, being newest form, being consciousness continuing in new medium, being examined as possible, as potential, as what might have happened to William's consciousness after Scraptrap burned, being digital resurrection, being consciousness uploaded, being William becoming Glitchtrap, being explored as connection, as potential continuation, as Springtrap, Scraptrap leading to Glitchtrap, being examined thoroughly, Burntrap, physical return. In Security Breach, Burntrap appeared, being found underground beneath Mega Pizzaplex, being corpse in suit again, being similar to Springtrap, or Scraptrap but worse, being more damaged, more obviously corpse, more clearly horror. Burntrap being examined as possible return of physical William, as Scraptrap surviving somehow, as corpse in suit persisting, or being examined as unclear relation to Scraptrap, as possibly separate, as possibly different corpse, as ambiguous connection, being FNAF maintaining mystery, refusing clear answers about whether Burntrap is Scraptrap continuing or new entity, whether William survived second fire physically, or whether Burntrap is something else, being ambiguous, being uncertain. Burntrap's existence suggesting William might have survived physically, might have continued as corpse in suit, might have persisted as Scraptrap into modern era, or suggesting someone else became corpse in suit, or suggesting unclear relationship between forms, being examined as ambiguous, as potentially being continuation of Springtrap, Scraptrap, as possibly being William still existing physically, still being corpse in suit, still being mechanical horror, Burntrap being underground, being below Pizzaplex, being connected to location somehow, being present, being threat, being examined as potential continuation of Springtrap's story, as possible survival of Scraptrap, as William potentially persisting physically beyond second fire, being explored as uncertain, as ambiguous, as unclear connection, multiple forms, William's persistence, William's potential existence in multiple forms, simultaneously being examined as possibility, being Glitchtrap digitally and Burntrap physically, being consciousness in software and corpse in suit, being digital and physical simultaneously, being William spreading, multiplying, existing in multiple media, being examined as extreme persistence, as refusal to die taken to maximum, as evil that wouldn't stay in single form, being potentially existing as digital consciousness and physical corpse simultaneously, being Glitchtrap and Burntrap being same William in different forms, being consciousness that split, that persisted multiple ways, that refused single death, being examined as possibility, as potential explanation, as way to understand both Glitchtrap and Burntrap being William, being same consciousness in multiple forms, being ultimate persistence, being evil that became multiple, being William refusing to stay dead so completely that he existed in multiple forms, being explored as theory, as possibility, as potential explanation for how William survived second fire, how Scraptrap could end but William could continue, being consciousness fragmenting, being splitting into digital and physical, being existing as data and as corpse, being examined thoroughly. Let modern era rest. Understanding Glitchtrap might be William digitally, that Burntrap might be William physically, that he might exist in multiple forms, that persistence might be absolute, being explored as possibilities, as potential continuations, being examined thoroughly, being ready to continue to thematic analysis, to understanding what Springtrap means, to examining symbolism, being explored after rest, after sleep, after letting modern era settle, being continued after rest. Part 8. The meaning of Springtrap, understanding the horror. As we approach final analysis, examining what Springtrap means thematically, what he represents symbolically, why he matters beyond literal events, being explored as symbol, as representation of ideas, as embodiment of themes, being analyzed thoroughly now. Body horror, corpse as character, Springtrap representing body horror, being corpse that moves, being dead body with consciousness, being remains that think, being horror of death that isn't death, being biological, horror, being grotesque transformation, being human body destroyed but continuing, Springtrap being examined as ultimate body horror, as person becoming corpse becoming active horror, being death that moves, being decay that thinks, being skeleton that hunts, being corpse as predator, being remains as threat, being body horror absolute, being horror of body that continued after death, that moved after life ended, that was conscious after biological functions stopped. Springtrap representing fear of body persisting, of corpse moving, of death not being end but being transformation into horror, being examined as body horror theme, as franchise's most explicit body horror, as a visible corpse, as obvious remains, as skeleton in suit, as decay that continued, being horror of seeing corpse, of knowing character is dead body, of understanding that skeleton is moving, that remains are thinking, being body horror, being Springtrap's primary horror, being what makes him frightening, being corpse as character being disturbing, being dead being active being horror, being examined thoroughly. Ironic justice, killed by his tool. Springtrap, representing ironic justice, being William killed by Spring Bonnie, being murderer destroyed by murder weapon, being person killed by tool he used to kill, being trapped in suit he wore to trap children, being imprisoned in costume he used to lure victims, William becoming Spring Bonnie, being ultimate irony, being killed by what he used to kill, being trapped by what he used to trap, being destroyed by what he used to destroy innocence. Springtrap being examined as poetic justice, as appropriate punishment, as murderer experiencing consequences through irony, being killed by his own creation, trapped in his own tool, imprisoned in his own weapon. Spring Bonnie that was William's choice becoming William's prison, costume that was weapon, becoming costume that was tomb, suit that facilitated evil, becoming suit that contained evil, being examined as perfect irony, as appropriate justice, as William experiencing exactly right consequences, being killed by what he used to kill being thematically perfect, being trapped in what he used to trap being symbolically appropriate, being Spring Bonnie containing William being ironic justice, being poetic punishment, being murderer getting what he deserved through being killed and trapped by his own tool, being examined as theme of ironic justice, of appropriate punishment, of consequences fitting crimes perfectly, being Springtrap representing this, embodying this, being symbol of ironic justice, being examined thoroughly. Refusal to die, evil persisting Springtrap representing evil that refuses to die, being William persisting beyond death, being consciousness continuing despite body dying, being evil that wouldn't end, that wouldn't stop, that wouldn't accept death. Springtrap being examined as symbol of persistent evil, of malice that endures, of darkness that continues, being William, refusing to die completely, becoming undead rather than dead, becoming corpse with consciousness rather than simple remains, being examined as evil's refusal to end, as malice's persistence, as determination to continue. Springtrap being William not accepting death, not allowing end, not permitting conclusion, being consciousness binding to suit rather than moving on, being awareness continuing rather than ending, being evil persisting rather than being eliminated by death. Springtrap representing theme that evil doesn't die easily, that malice endures, that some darkness continues beyond normal ending, being examined as FNAF's core theme embodied in Springtrap, being franchise being about evil persisting, about horror continuing, about darkness enduring, being Springtrap being perfect symbol of this, being corpse that moves, being ultimate representation of refusal to die, being consciousness continuing, being ultimate expression of persistence, being examined as thematic perfection, as Springtrap embodying FNAF's themes, representing franchise's approach to horror, being evil that doesn't end, being examined thoroughly. Transformation as punishment, Springtrap. Representing transformation as punishment, being William becoming what he feared possibly, becoming corpse, becoming horror, becoming thing rather than person. Transformation being examined as punishment, as consequence, as William's fate being becoming horror he created, becoming mechanical corpse, becoming thing like what he made children become. William experiencing possession like murdered children experienced it, becoming consciousness in animatronic-like victims became, being punished through transformation, through becoming what he inflicted on others, being examined as appropriate punishment, as William experiencing what he caused, as murderer becoming like victims, as person who created possessed animatronics becoming possessed animatronic himself. Transformation being punishment, being consequence, being William's fate being appropriate to his crimes, being becoming horror, being appropriate for person who created horror, being trapped in suit being appropriate for person who trapped children's bodies in suits, being consciousness in machine, being appropriate for person who caused children's consciousness to bind to machines, Springtrap being examined as William's punishment, as transformation being consequence, as becoming horror being justice, being examined as theme, as transformation as punishment, as appropriate consequences, as being what you made others be, as experiencing what you inflicted, being examined thoroughly. Visual design, horror that works, Springtrap's visual design being examined as brilliant, as effective horror, as working aesthetically, Springtrap being frightening to look at, being obviously wrong, being clearly corpse, being visually disturbing, design being examined as successful horror, as creating fear through appearance, through being obviously dead, body, through showing decay, through revealing skeleton, through being grotesque, Springtrap's design being analyzed as effective, as frightening, as working as horror character, being examined as Scott Cawthon's design success, as creating character that was visually scary, that looked dangerous, that appeared wrong, that was obviously horror, Springtrap being iconic, being recognizable, being memorable, being FNAF's most successful horror design possibly, being franchise's most famous villain appearance, being character that defined FNAF 3, that represented franchise, that became symbol of FNAF horror, design being examined as brilliant, as working perfectly, as creating horror through visibility of corpse, through obvious decay, through apparent death, through being clearly wrong, clearly dangerous, clearly horror. Springtrap's appearance being examined as design success, as aesthetic achievement, as horror that works visually, being examined thoroughly. Let these meanings rest understanding Springtrap as body horror, as ironic justice, as persistent evil, as transformation punishment, as successful design, being examined thoroughly as symbol, as theme, as representation, being ready to continue to conclusion, to final understanding, to comprehensive wrap-up, being explored after rest, after sleep, after letting meanings settle, being Springtrap's significance examined, being continued after rest. Conclusion: Springtrap's complete horror, final understanding. As we reach conclusion of this comprehensive exploration, gathering all elements of Springtrap's lore, understanding his complete story from Spring Bonnie to corpse in suit, to burned horror, to potential digital continuation. Being Springtrap examined completely, understood thoroughly, analyzed comprehensively, from springlock failure to 30 years sealed, to Fazbear's Fright, to first fire to Scraptrap, to second fire to potential modern continuations. Being complete lore told, being every aspect examined, being Springtrap understood as character, as form, as transformation, as symbol, as horror, being ready now for final rest, for comprehensive conclusion, for understanding that brings everything together, being examined completely now. Complete transformation, human to horror, Springtrap's journey being transformation from human to horror. William Afton being person, being human, being murderer, but being alive, being corporeal, being physical human. Springlock failure, transforming him, killing him physically, but not eliminating consciousness. Creating Springtrap, creating corpse in suit, creating mechanical horror, being transformation complete, being human becoming undead, being person becoming thing, being William becoming Springtrap, being alive becoming dead, but aware, being human body becoming corpse in machine, transformation being examined as complete change, as fundamental alteration, as William ceasing to be human and becoming horror, being person ending and corpse beginning, being humanity eliminated and mechanical horror created, but consciousness continuing, personality persisting, evil remaining, being transformation of form but not of essence, being William remaining William despite becoming Springtrap, being same consciousness in different form, being examined as transformation that changed everything externally but nothing internally. William's appearance changing absolutely, his form transforming completely, his physical existence becoming mechanical corpse, but his consciousness remaining, his personality continuing, his evil persisting, being transformation as punishment and persistence, being William experiencing consequence while refusing to end, being examined as complete journey, as understanding Springtrap being understanding transformation from human to horror, from person to corpse in suit, from William to Springtrap, being examined comprehensively. The perfect FNAF villain. Springtrap being examined as perfect FNAF villain, being embodiment of franchise's themes, being visual representation of horror persisting, being symbol of evil refusing to die, being corpse that moves embodying possessed animatronics concept, being William's persistence matching franchise's ongoing story, Springtrap being examined as ideal antagonist for FNAF, being character that works thematically, that fits franchise perfectly, that represents what FNAF is about, being horror of death that continues, being fear of corpse that moves, being dread of evil that persists, being examination of possession mechanics applied to murderer himself, being William experiencing what he inflicted, being purple guy becoming possessed animatronic like his victims, being examined as thematically perfect, as symbolically appropriate, as character that embodies franchise's concerns, that represents FNAF's horror, that manifests series themes, Springtrap being perfect FNAF villain because he is FNAF horror, being corpse in animatronic being franchise's core horror, being possessed machine being franchise's premise, being evil persisting being franchise's theme, Springtrap being all of these, being examined as perfect villain, as ideal antagonist, as character perfectly suited to franchise, being examined thoroughly. Body horror masterpiece. Springtrap being examined as body horror masterpiece, as franchise's most successful horror design, as corpse in suit being brilliantly disturbing, as visual representation of decay being effective, as skeleton visible through damaged suit being frightening, Springtrap's design being analyzed as aesthetic success, as horror that works visually, as character whose appearance creates fear, whose design disturbs, whose visual presentation succeeds as horror, being examined as Scott Cawthon's design achievement, as creating character that was genuinely frightening, that looked wrong, that appeared dangerous, that was obviously horror. Springtrap being memorable, being iconic, being recognizable, being FNAF's most famous villain appearance, being character that people remember, that defines franchise for many, that represents FNAF horror visually, design being examined as successful, as working perfectly, as creating exactly right appearance for corpse in suit, for mechanical horror, for William's undead form, being yellow, being ironic cheerfulness corrupted, being Spring Bonnie, being innocent character perverted, being visible corpse, being horror made explicit, being examined as design that works on multiple levels, being visually disturbing, being thematically appropriate, being symbolically perfect, being body horror done right, being corpse as character executed brilliantly, being Springtrap, being design success, being examined thoroughly, irony and justice Springtrap being examined as embodiment of ironic justice, as William being killed by what he used to kill, being trapped in what he used to trap, being destroyed by Spring Bonnie, that he used to destroy innocence, irony being perfect, being appropriate, being William getting exactly what he deserved, being murdered by murder weapon, being imprisoned in tool, he used to imprison children's trust, being trapped in costume he wore to trap victims, Springtrap being examined as poetic justice, as appropriate consequence, as punishment fitting crime, as William experiencing ironic fate, being killed by his own creation, trapped in his own tool, imprisoned by his own weapon, Spring Bonnie becoming his prison being perfect irony, being exactly right consequence, being what should happen to person who used entertainment character for evil, who corrupted innocent costume into murder weapon, who perverted children's trust into vulnerability, William becoming Spring Bonnie being ultimate irony, being perfect justice, being appropriate punishment, being examined as thematic perfection, as irony that works narratively, as justice that satisfies dramatically, as consequence that fits thematically, being Springtrap representing this, embodying this, being symbol of ironic justice complete, being examined thoroughly. Persistence absolute Springtrap, being examined as persistence absolute, as evil that won't die, as consciousness that won't end, as William refusing death completely, surviving springlock failure, enduring 30 years sealed, surviving first fire, potentially surviving second fire, potentially continuing as glitch trap, potentially persisting as burn trap, being examined as ultimate persistence, as refusal to die taken to extreme, as evil that endures regardless of circumstances, regardless of attempts to end it, regardless of death and fire and time and isolation. William as Springtrap persisting beyond everything, continuing despite everything, surviving everything, being examined as franchise's ultimate villain, because he won't stop, won't end, won't die. Being Purple Guy, being eternal through Springtrap, being child murderer persisting through corpse in suit, being evil continuing through mechanical, horror, Springtrap being examined as symbol of persistence, as embodiment of evil's endurance, as representation of how some darkness won't end, some malice won't stop, some horror continues beyond attempts to eliminate it, being FNAF's theme made physical, being evil persisting made visible, being death that doesn't end made character, being Springtrap representing absolute persistence, total refusal to die, complete determination to continue, being examined thoroughly, permission to rest completely. And now, with Springtrap's complete lore explored, with corpse in suit examined thoroughly, with William's transformation understood completely, with mechanical horror analyzed comprehensively, with every aspect of Springtrap covered, from Spring Bonnie to Springlock failure to 30 years sealed to Fazbear's Fright, to fires to modern forms to thematic meaning, you can rest completely, can sleep deeply, can drift into peaceful dreams knowing Springtrap's complete lore, knowing his transformation, knowing his imprisonment, knowing his survival, knowing his significance, knowing William as corpse in suit, knowing Purple Guy as mechanical horror, knowing Springtrap completely, comprehensively, thoroughly, being able to rest with full understanding, to sleep with complete knowledge, being finished with examination, being done with exploration, being Springtrap understood completely, being mechanical horror examined thoroughly, being corpse in suit analyzed comprehensively, being ready to sleep deeply, to rest peacefully, to dream calmly, being far from horror, being distant from body horror, being safe in sleep, knowing story is complete, knowing exploration is finished, knowing Springtrap is understood, being protected by fiction, being blessed with distance from horror, being able to rest knowing Springtrap's lore completely, being finished now, being complete now, being ready for deep sleep, for peaceful rest, for gentle dreams, final gratitude and gentle farewell. Thank you for joining this comprehensive exploration of Springtrap's lore, for staying through transformation, through imprisonment, through fires, through survival, through complete examination of corpse in suit, of mechanical horror, of William's undead form, for caring about understanding FNAF's most iconic horror, for wanting to know Springtrap completely, for being here through every aspect of his existence. Thank you for listening, for understanding, for exploring Springtrap's complete lore, from beginning to end, from Spring Bonnie to Springtrap to Scraptrap to potential modern forms. Thank you. Sleep now, completely, finally, deeply, peacefully, knowing Springtrap's complete lore, knowing corpse in suit thoroughly, knowing mechanical horror comprehensively, knowing William's transformation completely, being finished with exploration, being done with examination, being Springtrap understood fully, being ready to sleep deeply, to rest peacefully, to dream calmly, being far from body, horror, being distant from mechanical corpse, being safe in sleep, knowing story is told, knowing lore is complete, knowing Springtrap is examined, being protected by understanding this is fiction, being blessed with distance from horror, being able to rest peacefully, to sleep deeply, to dream gently, being finished now, being complete now, being ready for deep sleep, being Springtrap's lore complete, being corpse in suit examined, being mechanical horror understood. Good night. Sleep deeply, dream peacefully. Springtrap's lore is complete. The horror is examined. The corpse in suit is understood. Good night.